the rain in the southern part of the county has stopped. I'm not sure what the picture is north of East Ridge where we are, but outside it's bleak and gray. But it has stopped, so people who are thinking of getting out on their errands, going to work, doing their necessaries for today, and voting have less reason to, less cause for excuse, perhaps, that they can go to their balloting station, take some time, and vote in the state house elections here in the county or for governor, and there are also candidates up for federal senator. This is David Toulis, and we're at 92.7, 95.3 FM HD4. And Mark Casson is a man I want you to hear about because he has a view, a kind of a local economy view on elections and the work that has to be done that make elections worth something. And that work, I suggest, is not being done. And we will ask him. He is the director of Metanoia Christian Ministries, a prison ministry. We're going to ask him what could that possibly mean? What does it mean to suggest that because certain work has not been done by you and people like you in the culture, in society, that elections are not that significant? And we know elections are losing their significance. The polling data, the polling results, the turnout results are very strong as against elections entirely. Most people don't go. 4 in 5 people do not participate in elections who are registered to vote. They're registered, and yet they do not think it's worth the trouble to go to the balloting station. In 2016, the turnout percentage in Hamilton County was 15.6, and 2 years before it was 26%. So these are, you might say, 1 in 5 people vote. Well, Mark Casson, how do you analyze this low turnout? Why do people not participate in something that's kind of holy and righteous in the cause of a democratic republic?
Before I answer that question, David, I want to tell you a brief story. I was paroled from prison after 15 and a half years in 2004. I did 5 years of parole in California. That would get me off parole in February of 2009. 2010, there was an election. I voted. 2012, there was a national election. I voted. 2013, I moved to Chattanooga. I went to vote in 2014, and I could not. I did not have the right to vote in the state of Tennessee because I was a convicted felon. And so I had to pay some money and fill out some paperwork and take some time, a lot of time, to get my right to vote restored. So I don't understand low turnout. To me, I do like to vote. I think it's an important part of the American what we're allowed to do. God has blessed us to be in the United States of America. And part of that blessing comes with the responsibilities we have as citizens, a responsibility to vote, a responsibility to be on jury, serve on jury duties, things of that nature. We tend to scoff those responsibilities. We like the benefits that come with the society, but we don't like the actual responsibilities that come.
When you say benefits of the society, you mean a free society has as a civic cost the voting act?
Exactly. Also, the other benefits. There's a lot of benefits to living in America, right? Good wages, good health care access. There are thousands of benefits for living here. That's why so many immigrants come here. It's a great place to be and a lot of opportunity. And yet, with those opportunities and those blessings, there are also responsibilities. And one of them is that we go and vote. We elect those. Now, it's very fascinating because, as you know, a democratic republic is a fairly new idea in the history of the planet. It's not something that's been around for eons and millennia. It's new. And yet, it's such an amazing concept that we get to elect those who rule us and who make the laws. And for a Christian, that should be a great, heavy duty that we're electing people. Now, one of the problems I see in the United States with the evangelical church is I think we expect too much out of our legislators. Jesus, the scripture tells us that he has shown you, O man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you, but to do justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. Well, we want our legislators to do justly. We want them to make laws. We want them to legislate everything that goes on. And so we vote thinking that they're the answer to a lot of the problems, when the real answer is, hey, I should go and love my neighbor. I should go and work with someone who's poor. I should go and minister to the naked and to the prisoner and to those who are sick. That's what Jesus said to do. And we want the state to do it. And so when we vote, think we're giving too much power or too much to the state, and right now we've seen in the last 4 years, there's a big disenfranchisement with the government because they're not giving us what we want. And so we're willing to wash our hands of one group and pick somebody else and do other things, trade in what we say we will believe to put somebody in power that we think is going to make it better, and then they don't.
We're being seduced, Mark Casson, by politics. We're thinking if we vote this, we vote Jonathan Mason over Esther Helton or vice versa, one of those will do these good things that we want done. Do people really think that these candidates, whether Mrs. Black for the governor or Phil Bredesen for the Senate, that these people really can accomplish these things? Or is there somehow that we are appealing to magic? If we vote, people who are Christians, if we vote for the most Christian candidate, Bill Lee, maybe, then good things will happen in our state. And we've resorted to confidence in a magical process that we don't know how to explain, and we really can't see how it would work, but somehow we are confident that it will.
Well, you're right. And I think one of the problems we have is in national elections, when we're talking about national things like the president of the United States voting for that, there's a greater turnout. And yet he affects us less than the mayor, right? The mayor of Chattanooga is a more important election than the president of the United States, in my view. The local Congress people that are going to serve me right here in my community they're going to make laws that affect me in Chattanooga that aren't going to affect the people in Knoxville or in Nashville or all the way over across the state. So we have a wrong view. The voter turnout is lower when it's strictly regional voting or localized voting, when it should be the other way around, because those are the people who are impacting me personally the most. And I want to work with them. How many people vote and aren't ever involved in politics? They never go and listen to a political person speak personally. They only know the views that they see online or what they see on a sign. It's printed in a particular color, so he must be my side because he's printed in this one. I saw a sign. There's a sign at East Ridge down here that says Esther Helton voted for Barack Obama twice. That's what it says. And the word twice is capitalized and in italics. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
The viewer is supposed to understand that as a bad thing.
Okay, so it is.
And
My response to the bad thing is President Donald Trump voted for Barack Obama once. But I bet the guy that put that sign up or the gal who put that sign up probably is a Trump supporter. And so it doesn't matter when your guy voted for him. It only matters when this person did. And so what I'm getting at is that why does that go on? Why do people stop with what me? I changed my party affiliation and how I vote in the last election because I hold things to be really, really dear and true and uncompromising. And I will not put someone in office who compromises on those things. The values are more important to me than the particular party affiliation. Right? You're a conservative. I'm a conservative.
Well, I'm a classical liberal, but go ahead.
Okay. I'm a conservative guy, but I'm not going to just vote blindly because the party is supposed to be this or the party is supposed to be that. And so to me, I'm asking myself using biblical principles, is this person wise? Do they love God? Do they submit to God? Where do they stand in morality? I can teach somebody to build a widget. I can't teach them not to steal from me or to be dishonest to me. And so we decided, hey, everybody's a sinner. We don't care if a guy's honest or not, or a gal's honest or not. The very guy saying you're lying, Hillary, is a liar. And that seems to be okay. And so fundamentally, the problem we have, we live, I believe as a Christian, we live in a two-kingdom world. We live in the kingdom of heaven, and we have responsibilities there, and we live in the kingdom of this world. And we happen to be blessed to live in this kingdom, this world, particularly in the United States of America. And we're one of the few countries in the world where you get to elect. We don't live in a tyranny. We get to elect our representatives.
And you would hold that we do have real choices, Mark Casson. These are distinct choices, or are they really just sort of disputing family members? They're both the Republicans, socialists, conservative socialists, and the Democrats are progressive left-wing socialists.
Well,
we do have a real choice.
You do, but isn't it true? Isn't it true that the parties look more and more alike? The parties at one time, I thought I could say the Republican Party stood for this. It was the party of family values. Well, they put a guy at the top of their party who's been divorced 3 times and committed adultery on each of his wives. So how is that promoting family values? We could say that the party was this, the party that's against abortion, and yet they control all 3 the House, the Congress, the Senate, and the presidency, and they haven't defunded Planned Parenthood. They haven't done away with abortion. So in what way are they promoting getting rid of abortion? I was told I had to get this president in because if I didn't, the Supreme Court would be taken over. And you know what? We got him in. We got a nominee. And last time I checked, Roe v. Wade's still the law of the land.
This is David Toulis. We're talking with Mark Casson, who oversees Metanoia Christian Ministry. It's a ministry for people in prison. He has been in prison himself and is telling us that he had his right to vote restored. We're talking about the idea of elections, the purpose of elections. Do they matter? What do people who are professing Christians have as a duty to them? And the number is 800-8949. That's 800-8949, brought to you by by Nuganomics.com. And I argue that near is better than far, small than big, and simple than complex. And in the footnotes at 5-point type in Helvetica font, the neutral font that does not have any coercive and compulsory serifs, the little feet or the little blades on the letter, you find this: personal is better than corporate, and physical than abstract. So we do have a real choice, Mark Casson. We don't, though, hear anything about election sermons in Christian churches. We are a city here in East Ridge of churches. There are 700 or so across the county, and I don't think a single one has what used to be the election sermon, where what happened in the 1700s on those Lord's days when that sermon was preached.
Well, you say the 1700s. In 1920, in New York City, sermons were being printed on the front page of the New York Times. Politicians were encouraging their people to vote, and they were encouraging their people to vote for certain candidates in many cases, or at least for ideals, Christian ideals. Vote for the ideals and look for those ideals in the candidates. One of the other problems we have is many candidates get to Washington, or they get to the level of government they're going to, and their job is to get reelected rather than to serve the people that elected them. And if they really understood things, they'd realize the more they serve the people, the more they will get reelected. You have to me, I agree with you. Local is better than national. We need to be involved in our local government. I encourage people to go and vote. Overwhelm the voting polls. Go and vote your conscience and vote for the people that are going to affect us here in Chattanooga. There's a lot of things that can affect us here.
Well, I dare say, Mark Casson, that the candidates that we've had none of them are. You may have some conservatives. If we are the Trump conservative station here, and so I mentioned that to my listeners, sort of assuming that. But I'm a classical liberal myself. But we don't have really candidates who are outstanding Christians who thought into the details. We don't have anyone who's an outstanding constitutionalist who strikes a blow at the machine that he's going to go and serve. No candidate has blistering, angry attacks at the way things are done in the government and proposes reform. We have no reformer candidates in either party, Democrat or Republican, and so that's why. And we have in Tennessee we have commercial government. We don't have government. We don't have a government of the people. We have a government of merchants and commerce, and it's controlled by insurance interests, and it has a kind of a corporatistic perspective. And my view is that it doesn't really care about liberty, and it fights liberty viciously in the courts. We've covered some of those cases here at Nuganomics. So I'm not sure that I would offer a lot of hope for the listener that, well, there may be a candidate in the next cycle that really fights for constitutional liberties and the ordinary working man.
Correct. And I would encourage the people listening to read their Constitution, study it, understand it. The Constitution was not written for the state. It was written for the individual. It wasn't written even for a group of people. It's written for individual rights, that the state should not infringe upon your right as an individual to unreasonable search and seizure. It would not, that you as an individual have the right from unreasonable bail. You as an individual have the right to practice your religion. You have a right to bear arms. It's not that the Americans as a whole have the right. It's that the individual within the borders of the United States, born here, citizen, you have these rights. Or if you're here legally, nationally, you have these rights, and get to know those rights, exercise the rights,
meaning assert them.
That's right.
When they're challenged.
The problem is over the course of 200 plus years, courts and governments have changed those rights so that now you don't have the right to presumption of innocence. The right to bail is $250,000 or $500,000 or $1 million bail for certain crimes. Is that reasonable or is that unreasonable? Well, that becomes a matter of interpretation now.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned bail, Mark Casson. You oversee Metanoia Prison Ministries, and you know that there's a great deal of pretrial justice that's not being granted to defendants. They can't cash bail is used harassingly and really unthinkingly to penalize people who are often very poor and they can't make bail. Bail is really just a guarantee that that person will appear at the next hearing. It's not to evaluate the crime, it's to evaluate his person and the prospect of his return to the bench, to the bar. And we hear nothing from in the political debate about that particular issue, cash bail reform in Tennessee.
I haven't heard anything about cash bail reform anywhere, even though it is an issue that keeps our county jails filled with people who are unable to pay the minimum. Bail is not set by the individual, like you just said. It is actually set by the crime. So if you have a crime of grand theft of property under $50,000, your bail is going to be $20,000, of which you have to come up with 10%, $2,000, to get a bail bondsman to bond you out. It takes not into any account whether you have an income of $200,000 and can pay the bail, or whether you're a pauper and have no money.
Yeah, and poor people don't have the liquid cash to write the check.
That's right.
They go to the bail bondsman, and I suspect that the bail bondsman don't have the money either, but it's all done in a fractional system. In other words, they're doing it on credit, not on actual holdings. But the individual has to pay. He has to write a check that clears the court's account, and then he can get out. But
or
again,
if you use a bail bondsman, as I understand it, you must have 10% in some sort of an asset, like a home, a car, or cash. You give 10%. So you'd have to come to the bail bondsman with $2,000, and he'll give you the other $18,000 to the court, saying, "I've got that covered."
Right. Well, my point is that I don't know that is actually done. The $18,000 that he actually writes the check to the court. I think that there may be a fractional, honor system among bondspeople. So they're making money. They're making a killing. As the New York Times has reported, on the poor who don't get the feedback, right? If you write a bond to get out, Mark Casson, you get the whole of it back if you show up, right? When the proceedings are done, you get it all back. But if you have to engage the bondsman, his fee you don't get back. So now, just mentioning, we have Jim Hammond has a Q&A, repeated an interview with Chloe Morrison at Nougat.com. And he says that he believes that he's working in the direction of reducing the number of people in the jail. Again, we're talking about pretrial detention, and even some people who are there who simply have mental problems. What should my listener think about the intersection, Mark Casson, between law enforcement and people who have clear mental, spiritual problems that make them cause some statutory offense?
I think we need to look at people individually and understand that we are chemical and electrical beings. Our bodies run on chemistry, they run on electricity. And so, for example, I've seen sane professors, a professor at the University of California, go crazy because his blood sugar was off. And he peeled out of a parking lot in his vehicle, and he was going excessive speed down the street. And it was all due to imbalance of sugar in his head. Well, there are all kinds of diseases that are real diseases that people have that require a chemical balancing. And if they don't have those, we should help them get that. The problem is, how do you know? When a police encounters a person, how do they know whether that person's suffering from a chemical imbalance, or they're high on some drug, or they don't care?
Well, there's a biblical requirement that is reflected in our law, and that's called the mens rea requirement, or intent requirement. If a person has a physiological problem, there cannot be intent, and the cop can't see intent, and the intent is required by law to be argued for every element of a charge. And every charge, there has to be the argument for intent, or mens rea, guilty intention.
Correct.
And that's ignored by everybody. No one stresses that part of the law.
I agree, and I think there's a complexity there, that if I'm a real life officer in a real life situation, and a guy who's having a chemical breakdown in his mind is bearing down on me, whether he's running at me or he's in a car, all I can tell is that his intent is, I believe, to hurt me. I don't know what's causing the intent, but I just know that the car's coming at me. And so I've got to do something, or the guy's running at me and I've got to do something. And so I do have a sympathy with police, but I think all too often our courts give too much authority to the police when it comes to arrests. Like when it comes to, hey, I want to search you. You have to let me search you. Well, no, we don't. Can I close with one real quick thing? I want to ask, the idea is this. Right now, if you do a history search on times of mass shootings and mass explosions, they're done by white people, white males between the ages of 25 and 60. What if we started getting stopped every other day and asked to see what's in our car? Do we have explosives? We would hate it.
David Tillis, Mark Casson, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good to be with you, David.
Chattanooga Radio, Digital FM 95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM's news now.
Authorities in North Georgia say marijuana was sold right out in the open, labeled as a non-THC containing herb. Riskil Kumar Patel and Tankant Bajwa both arrested, booked into the Catoosa County Jail. The products claim to not have THC in them, which is a psychoactive ingredient in marijuana, but prosecutors say it was full-on marijuana. Warrants out for a fatal hit-and-run suspect. Israel Martin Alonzo wanted for the killing of 62-year-old Donald Rackley, who was hit by a speeding vehicle